All right, we're live.
All right.
So what's up?
Hey.
So, what did you do yesterday? You were telling me you were doing something fun last night.
Oh yeah, I went roller skating for the first time in a long time, and it was a blast.
Did you crash?
Sister and I. No, I didn't. Not even during "Everyone Bites the Dust," which
Really?
is like, if I'm gonna crash, it's got to be during this song. No, it was fun. It'll be it's a great workout too. So I think it'll be.
Jana's killing it at Roller Valley.
Yeah. The floors are all redone. It's really nice in there.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think it's so cool with her.
Have
Have you met her?
I have a couple times. You brought her into the shop a couple times.
Yeah, she's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really
That's
cool
tight.
spot. It's fun.
Yeah, we were thinking about going, but we were at I'm trying to remember the name of the business, but it's up above Hopjacks in the Valley Mall. There's like a toddler it's like it makes me think of like the McDonald's toys that we had, but it's like on steroids.
Nice.
So my brother and I
jumped in and played with your kids.
Yeah, took them last night and
couldn't resist.
Did work, but there's like a ninja. There's like a part of it is like the little like a ninja area, and so at the very end when we were all done and the kids were safe and we made it, I put my son's shoes on. We were walking out the door and he just darts off and dives in this ninja thing and whacks his head. So he has a little black eye this morning.
Oh, little hezzy.
Yeah. But then we went and got ice cream
War
afterward and he was all about it. So it is what it is. So, well, CJ, thanks for coming in. For those of you that are listening, CJ is our activities director. So CJ gets to go do all the fun activities with the women in our house. And CJ is also the owner of the Garden Coffee Shop. So every time we have a guest on, we give them the garden coffee, and it's been really, really fun, and we love it. So it seems like that's going really well because every time we go into the coffee shop, it's packed. So
yeah, it's definitely hit and miss. If you want to come early and get that couch, the comfy couch.
You did something with friends?
Yeah, we had Friendsgiving last week. So I think we're going to keep doing it every year because it was really fun. We set up a photo booth and had like a brick wall photo booth and had some fun specials. And it involved Friends, the show. So we got a little following and it was really fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's cool. So we'll just dive into it because you have a very unique story. And I think with the end of the year, I think a lot of people, they have a lot of questions about our anti-trafficking program. And so we've kind of got through Thanksgiving. And so we had Gail come on and Della and talk a lot about the food and the meals and stuff. But I think we're going to be transitioning this month and having you and Anya and talking a little bit more about the anti-trafficking program. But you have a pretty unique story. And so I thought, let's have CJ come in, and we've done this a couple times. You've shared your story with me a few times, but it seems like every time we've done it, like something's off with the audio or something like that.
Oh yeah, so the one time at the
So I'm like, this will be perfect because now we've got the new studio. So I'm like, this will be great. We'll have the audio working perfect. So
awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So okay. The average age that a girl gets targeted for trafficking seems to be between, everyone says like 12 and 14, but let's say like 11 to 15 years old. Let's say I meet CJ in junior high, or I'm 11 or 12 years old, and you're 11 or 12. Who am I meeting?
Well, I had kind of a crazy childhood, dysfunction in my family and stuff like that. So that trauma and abuse. And so that really contributed to a lot of, who I was at that point. But I was definitely a wild child with a rebel streak, liked to have fun and adventure and all that. But I was also really quiet and didn't really open up a lot about, I just didn't really open up a lot. So I was pretty quiet, held a lot of stuff in. But also had that rebel and at that point I was already, drinking and smoking weed just because of what I had, been raised in and stuff. So
you're like 5th, 6th grade and you're already doing that?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So you had, so you were already kind of a rebel, but you were quiet?
Yeah. So, I mean, I like to go and have fun and like, definitely if I had my mind on something, set on something, I've always been like this. Like if I get it in my head, I'm going to go do it. It doesn't matter what my parents say, and then, I had some older sisters, ran around with like, the neighborhood thugs and stuff. So I just, that kind of rebel wild streak. But also, when it came to like my emotions and just, personal things, like I'd never opened up about any of my trauma or anything sure. like that. And so, and I think a lot of it too, I was kind of quiet in school, but then, because I was kind of low income and bullied a little bit. And so that kind of set me on this course to like be hard and rebel. So were you like artistic or into drawing? Oh yeah, I was very artistic when I was younger. I was actually, I've always been really tall, so I was into basketball, and I drew a lot and into the arts, and I also was outside. I was always outside, hanging out the river and picking up critters, and I was kind of a tomboy. Okay. But really, that I began to lose a lot of that when I started smoking weed and partying, because that kind of became my new thing.
Got it. They kind of just slowly morphed into a different person.
Yeah.
So when you're, how do you go from, being the little fun out playing all the time to the smoking pot to all of a sudden you're finding yourself, being trafficked? How does that happen?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with my family dynamics. My parents went through this like really nasty divorce when I was 11 and split our family, even though, even before that it was straight dysfunction, but now it was like straight, like a big custody battle. And my mom ended up taking my little sister off to Florida. And then my dad, I went to live with my dad, and we were like living on the east side in a little tiny like studio house thingy. And being in that environment when my dad was just drinking and passing out every night and, smoking weed. So I think being in that environment on the east side, there's riffraff all around. Sure. It wasn't hard for me to, and I think I dealt with a lot of like my internal pain. That's how kind of I dealt with it, was just like, oh, check out and go and hi, that feels good. I kind of sought out things that made me feel good, probably because I was hurting and didn't know how to deal with it.
Sure. And then everybody around you is doing that.
Yeah.
Sure. So you end up, when you move in with your father, you move to Seattle?
Yeah. He ended up moving us over to Seattle. And like I said, all my friends were like on the east side. And so I was pretty angry about that. And we, in transition, before we moved into our apartment in Seattle, we were actually on the strip over on Aurora in Seattle. Excuse me. And so I'm angry. My dad's at work all day, leaves me with weed and cigarettes. So that 13, I'm like, thanks, Dad. But that, we were on this little like motel, and that's when, this, pimp spotted me. And at that time, even though I had been involved in so much, I still was really naive to that world. Like I actually remember walking over to the gas 13. Station. Yeah. Like I had no idea like anything about pimps and like how that world worked. Like, even though I'd been listening to it for years and the music and the culture, but still didn't know. And so I actually remember walking to the gas station one day, and this guy like stopped, like this older man, older white guy stopped, and like he's like, "Hey, you want to go on a date?" And I'm like, "Why is this older guy?" Like I didn't know what no. I mean, I was super confused by it. And then that was right before, Scotty struck up, this relationship with me. And after, I made the decision to run away, even though it was definitely, he figured out really quickly what I was into, just weed and like, partying. And
so for people that don't know, because like we know this, you and I know the story so
the
well.
grooming process.
Yeah, what happened? So you're at the hotel, and this guy Scotty, how old is he?
He's has to be in his late 20s, early 30s, maybe even well into his 30s. I don't even know, honestly, how old he was.
So you're 13.
He's a good-looking black man.
Okay. He's a good-looking dude. He's in his 30s, and you're 13.
Yeah.
Okay. And he comes up and he starts striking a conversation with you.
I was probably out smoking a cigarette or something, and he spotted me. And I remember actually seeing him and kind of making eye contact with him from across the parking lot a couple times. And then finally he came over and started talking to me and invited me out. I snuck out one night when my dad passed out and went and met up with them. And then after that, we just kind of stayed in touch somehow. I don't even remember how. I think we had pagers or something back then. I don't know. But ended up, after we moved to our apartment in Renton, I packed a little bag and went over to Fred Meyer, and they picked me up, and he and this other gal that was with him, and proceeded to tell me, what I'd be doing, and, really began that like grooming process, and which I think really began when he first met me. But and it kind of clicked to me, like, oh, like even thinking about that guy that stopped, I'm like, that's what he stopped for. Like I kind of like some connections were being made, and I was freaking out. But like I said, I wasn't one to be like, what am I doing? We were already on our way out of town, heading to California.
Because you wanted him to think you were cool.
Probably had something to do with it. Like, kind of going along with it. But I'm like scared and, very scared. And like, what did I get myself into? Like, what am I going to be doing? And I was, So
he basically, he comes to you and he says, you think at the time from our past conversations, you're thinking this guy just wants a relationship with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I was like, ooh, I'm running away with my Romeo. Like,
and so then all of a sudden
he's going to buy me things and, flashing all of his fancy things and his weed sacks to me and stuff. I'm like, yeah, this is great. I'm going to go.
So what's it like when you show up and you think you're going to be running away with your Romeo, and then all of a sudden you show up and it's not just you and him?
No, it's not. There's this other girl that's clearly, they're close, and she's in the front seat and I'm in the back. I'm like, well, okay, this is weird initially. And then right off the bat, and then it was like this, red van that was like, she had like a kid. So I'm not sure. I think we were going to her kid, but I mean, it was just like messy and just not like what I was imagining in my head,
Yeah. So you're thinking you're running with Romeo. Now all of a sudden you're in a vehicle with some other people, and it's just not what you're thinking. When do you figure out, what's about to happen? Like, when does it click? Do they tell you right when you get in the car, this is where we're going? Or do they wait a while until you can't make a decision?
They kind of, if I remember correctly, I mean, it was a long time ago, they kind of waited a while, and then we had to stop at her family's in like Beaverton and stay there for a couple nights. And they just like slowly like started sharing, like informing me of what was going to happen when we get to California. Oh yeah, I'm going to take you shopping. And then, started giving me the rules and the rundown of, this is what's going to happen and how it's going to go down. And at that point, that's when I was just like shocked. I was in shock about it for sure. I do remember that. I do remember just thinking like in my head, like, oh my gosh, like I can't do that. But
yeah, like now you're like, oh, I've been tricked. I thought he loved me and cared about me.
Well, kind of, but I still had this like fondness of him, and I still wanted his attention and like to please him, and like his, yeah, it's very twisted,
Yeah. So,
and he gave it to me. I mean, like he was, there would be times when he was very sweet and, Mr. Romeo, but most of the time, especially after that first, week or two, it was, he was very mean and controlling and abusive, and had a quota, had to be out there all day. And so
what happens when you go from Beaverton? Where do you end up going from there?
Over to, he had some family in Oakland, California. So, International Boulevard right there, in Oakland is a hot spot for, at that time. And I don't know what it's like these days, but, yeah, took me shopping right away. And we were staying with his nieces, and, she had a bunch of kids like right in the projects. And, and it wasn't probably the next day that, he put me out there. It wasn't within 5 minutes that someone stopped.
And when you say you went shopping, this is, I'm assuming he's not taking you to the Buckle.
No.
And you're getting to choose all the clothes you want, right?
No. I mean, that was like one of the things that he kind of hooked me with, was like, oh, we're going to go shopping and, get your nails done and all this. And, but I didn't get to pick my clothes. Like, he was picking tight little mini skirt, nothing that I would have ever worn. I was more of a tomboy, like I like baggier clothes and stuff. Yeah. So it was very much out of my comfort.
Mm-hmm. What's it like when you finally have to go out and he puts you out on the street? Like, what is that like when you're 13 and you're out on the street? I mean,
it was super scary. Honestly, I think that so much of that time I just blocked out, and I don't really, I think you really have to check out.
Survival mode.
Yeah, survival mode. So I definitely remember some traumatic experiences that happened. A couple times I got robbed and beat up, just different things like that. But for the most part, like I just went out there and did it and completely just blocked it out, But
for like another 13-year-old girl, 14-year-old girl that might be listening, and they're thinking, oh, this is going to be fun and we're going to make money. And like, what's it really like?
It's not worth it. It's just degrading and just soul sucking and gross. It's just gross. Nothing about that life is glamorous at all.
Yeah. What happens when you don't meet your quota?
Well, there was definitely, I'd stay out there until I did typically, but there was a few times that I would get punished for, whether that be an ice bath, or he would just, smack me or hit me in the legs and, bruise me up pretty good, but just not on my face. And
what do you mean ice bath?
Like there was a couple times, like twice I can remember that I got in trouble, and he stuck me in a bath and just poured buckets of ice, or like bags. He'd go get bags of ice and just poured them in the bed and made me sit in there for I don't even know how long. Just
as a punishment, so that the next time you'll make sure that you get your quota,
or even whatever I did wrong. I mean, there was different things. I mean, you have rules, and don't talk to cops, or don't talk to other black men, or don't just certain things like that. So,
jeez, what how does that, how do you eventually decide to, that he doesn't care for you and that you're going to get out of there? Because for so many women that we work with, man, they'll come into our program and they've been going through this for years, and like the manipulation and thinking that this is what true love is and this is what relationship is. And a lot of the women that we have in our program now, they were in the life for years and they never had a driver's license. They never had a bank account because somebody was always driving them somewhere, or somebody always took care of their finances. And like, where did you find the internal strength to realize, like, he doesn't, because you're 13. I mean, he's really manipulated you. How do you finally realize, like, this isn't for me? And how did you get out of it?
Well, I think it was really a divine, intervention in a lot of ways. He ended up leaving me with his family, who was also really abusive, his nieces. And I did not like them, at all. Like there was one of them I was kind of close to, but he left and he was gone for like a week. If he would have come back any earlier, I don't know if I would have left, because I had this, attachment to him, and I wanted to please him. And even though he was very rotten and, terrible, I still loved him,
Yeah.
And so had this bond with him. And so him leaving me with his nieces, and then the drama and chaos that surrounded all that. I remember this one gal just I clearly remember this, like her just saying, like, CJ, what are you doing here? You've got to get out of here. And it was actually the girlfriend of one of the nieces. And And so it just kind of planted a seed in me, and I'm like, it just like, what am I doing? I do need to leave. And so, I had some regular clients that I'd see and stuff. And there was one of them that, I knew that I could confide in, and, that he would help me. And so he ended up taking me and buying me some clothes, getting me a bus ticket. And, I pretty much had to run away, and it was scary because, I knew that they were out looking for me and they're going to tell Scotty. And it was pretty scary, but, I ended up staying in this little hotel one night and then catching the bus the next day, and
the other
somehow
ones
making my way back home.
The other traffickers or pimps in that neighborhood, in their mind, they know that you're property of Scotty, right? Because you're branded with his name.
Well, yeah, but there was so many, like there's so much going on. So I don't know how much they really knew. They just know if there's a girl out there working, she's probably being controlled or owned by somebody. And so, there was actually one of the times that I got in trouble, that I actually did, another pimp did approach me, and I went, left with him and went to San Francisco and was with him for like a day or so, and then ended up calling. I just got scared, so I called Scotty, even though this other situation, it's just a total God thing, I think, because this other situation didn't seem like it was going to be near as bad as the situation with Scotty. I still, just something in me, and maybe it was that weird bond I had with Scotty, I ended up calling him and saying, "Oh, come pick me up." And he picked me up, and I had different clothes on and stuff. And that was one of the times that I got in big trouble, ice bath and all that. But yeah, so they'll, I don't think that they really know each other, but they'll definitely try to snag each other's girls, apparently. So,
man.
Yeah.
So when you go and you meet, so just so people understand, I mean, like this does happen. There are men that are wanting to buy 13-year-old girls.
Yeah.
Right? Because
you could tell I was young.
Yeah, because you just said you had consistent clients, and you knew my way out of this was I still have to go connect with a client. And that's that was your reality at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you decide, okay, I'm going to get out of here, and this client gets you the clothes and a bus ticket. What's it like coming home? Because, I mean, how long were you gone? I mean, your family must have been freaking out.
Yeah, I was gone for several months, at least, a whole summer. I don't know the exact time. But my mom she nearly killed herself looking for me, hanging up flyers, going up and down Aurora. I think they had some kind of idea of because I had left a note for my dad and saying I was leaving and stuff. But, and I don't know if my dad had, I'm not really sure, but, came back, and my family was even more, I didn't go back to Seattle, came back to Spokane to my mom. And, it was hard. It was definitely hard, but I was always a type to just, like I said, not really open up and not really share, too much or anything with anybody. And so, I got back in school, and, then I think not dealing with stuff and not talking about it, that trauma just kind of eats at you. And and also thinking I was went through this experience, so I'm grown and I'm even more of a rebel now. So I discovered meth, and I'd be gone for weeks at a time. And then my mom, she couldn't handle it. And so
the trauma that you went through down there kind of led you into harder drugs.
I think so. I really do. When I discovered meth in a way to just really check out, it was a lot different than just smoking weed or drinking. It was a whole new, numb the pain, just don't care about anything, just check out and, be high for days. And so
how old are you at this point?
Probably 14, 15
on meth.
Yeah. And so, it wasn't too long, before, I had to go through the at-risk youth, all the things, and went to Daybreak, I think once or twice. And my mom tried everything, and then she found this program down in Florida, and we moved across country, and because her ex-husband and yada yada. But this program I went to down in Florida was actually really, I think, really inspired a lot of what I do today and my passion about working with ministries like HRC. It was for youth, and it was like a 4-month long program, but we had great mentors. I just remember them like so clearly, like how much they impacted me. I think I probably dealt with a little bit during the counseling sessions during that time, but still obviously not really the depth of what I was so ashamed, I think.
Because
was
was it
really
more
share.
of a program for drug rehabilitation?
Yeah, it was a drug rehabilitation.
Because at that time, they're not thinking like this has anything to do with trafficking.
Yeah,
they're just looking at the drug
I
part.
think especially back then,
Sure.
they had no idea.
Yeah.
And so I think I did, heal from a lot of things, just deal with my dad and that kind of stuff. But when we got back, there's still just crazy dysfunction in my family. And my mom had to leave this guy because he was beating up on her, and we had to run away from him back up to Spokane, and was able to get back in school, and still partying a little bit. But I, met a pretty cool group of friends, and mostly just smoked weed and stuff through my high school. I was able to actually get through high school. I did like this summer long program, and was able to catch all my credits up, and just God's grace was all over my life at that point. And
was it ESD 101? I had to do ESD 101 to get all my credits back to go back to high school.
It was like through the summer or something. I remember just pretty much writing a report, and like I got all my credits. I was like, oh man, God really had my back in a lot of ways. And I see that now in life, like the hand of God, like in my situation. And, but anyway, I, ended up just getting pregnant, and just still, I think, had this so much undealt with, trauma, and then just my experience. And so, after I had my son, I turned back to the life and drugs, and my mom, thank God, was able to take care of him while I was going through my crazy. But
so you actually end up having your son, and then instead of that, snapping you out of it, did it just feel overwhelming? So it almost like pushed you back into the life? I
think in a lot of ways, yeah. I mean, my friends are all graduating. I've got this little baby, or I'm pregnant, so I can't really partake in the parties. And,
because you're still in high school when you have your son, right?
Yeah. Yep, I had him, in my senior year. And so when I graduate, I'm like, I have this little car and a little apartment, and I just kind of just discovered, not really discovered meth, but just met some people, and started using hard drugs again. And I fell so much harder and faster than before. And it wasn't long before I literally lost everything. It's down to the clothes on my back. So, thankful that my mom was able to take care of my baby at the time. But
so how does it all start changing? Like, let's talk about the good stuff. Like how do you go from this, and this is your reality, and you've been trafficked, but you haven't told anybody, because there's so much guilt and shame, and you get back, you're into hard drugs. They're thinking, well, you just need drug rehabilitation, right? You go through that, get pregnant, keep partying. Like, how do you, if somebody was to look at CJ today, the last thing they're thinking is that you're a meth addict, right? How does that happen?
Jesus, for sure. Like my grandma, throughout my childhood, like she's always a pretty constant, like believer and dragging us to church. And so, I definitely recall having, these moments where I'm like, yeah, I accept Jesus, and, and stuff like that, but I never really started following him. And so, and then there was definitely a time in my teenage years where I'm just like, oh God, and I really saw other things and spirituality and just weird stuff. And it wasn't until I really hit I was at my lowest. I mean, I literally was like sleeping outside here and there. Not even the drug addicts were letting me, or drug dealers were letting me in anymore. And so I think it was really the hand of God that led me to that place, because when the drug dealers aren't letting me in the door, I'm like, I have nothing. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I just remember actually crying out to God, like, God, if you're real, because I remember being pregnant with Buddy and going to 180 and like raising my hand and like praying the prayer. And like, so I think something at that point really clicked in me, but so when I was crying out, and I know that it was Jesus, and God that I was just like crying out to, but I just had just like a total, moment where I remember just screaming out, like, if you're real, like I need something has to give. And it wasn't shortly after that I ended up in jail and picking up the Bible and actually started reading it. And Jesus showed up through the word, through his words, and through the ministries that came into the jailhouse. It was very impactful on my life, and just hearing the testimonies from people that, and seeing their life change, like, oh, if they can do it, I can do it, made a big impact. And so I knew I was changed. And, but when I got out, I'm still, turned to the spas and using what I knew. And, but I knew I was changed. Like but I just didn't really have anyone to go to church with or anything. And so I even went by myself a couple times back to the church my grandma dragged me to when I was a kid. And,
so you felt something when you were in jail, when you really gave your life to the Lord, and through that ministry, the ministries that would go to the jail, you felt something internally shifting. But when you got out, you just didn't really have a community to really know what to do yet. I
had no idea. Yeah. So what to do with this faith? I mean, I'd be like almost preaching to some of these friends that I was with, and I just remember them like laughing at me, or just like, oh, it's crazy girl, it's Jesus girl, And so when I don't know if I actually remember praying for anybody or anything, but I do know that I would talk to God, and, and just like, I would feel bad too, because I had the conviction now in the Holy Spirit, just like when I'd go and do drugs or go and work at the spa or something, like I knew it wasn't right. I'm like, what am I doing? I got, and so, God brought me someone to go to church with.
So how's that happen?
Yeah. I was at the club one night and met a guy there, and, he was kind of going through his stuff, but a little bit, might have had a few drinks, buying all my friends drinks, and I ended up leaving with him. And,
so the sanctification part hadn't happened yet.
Yeah, no. And so, when he mentioned, I remember being in the back seat, my sister and my friend were driving up front, and him like saying, oh yeah, I got 2 daughters and they go to Christian school. I'm like, oh, you're a Christian? I was like, I just remember being so excited. Like, oh my gosh, I met someone else that I could actually talk to Jesus, talk about Jesus with. And, so I ended up going home with him, and, we've been together ever since. Like, he took me on, like, we played phone tag for a week or so, and then he picked me up and took me on like a real date, like, and without expecting anything from me, like, took me to a movie, brought me a little gift and nice dinner. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And so, yeah, I hung on to that one, and we ended up, you try my church, I'll try your church. And my church happened to be the one that my grandma dragged me to. And we decided we really loved that one. And we started going faithfully, and God just did a work in us, and it was a process for sure. Like,
do you mind sharing where that church was at?
One Spokane.
One. Yeah. With Pastor Will and Teresa.
Yep. Love them. Spiritual
That's
parent.
awesome.
I definitely consider them spiritual parents, and love that congregation. They're my family for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
So you end up going to, you and your husband, Jason, start going to one, and just start diving in and start seeing life change, and decide that you're going to get married, and
so we were actually living together, and partying a little bit on the weekends, going to the club still, and definitely God is convicting us through this. But we ended up getting involved into a discipleship class, and our leader of that mentioned this premarital, and so we like, yeah, we should do this. And they like had us sign a purity covenant, move apart. And so I don't think they're doing that anymore, but it was really good.
Did
for
you
us.
do it?
So, yeah, we did. Like, I ended up moving in with my mom and Buddy and I for a time. And,
wow.
And then when we got married, we got a place. And so we got married really fast after that. It wasn't long for him to propose and go to the hitching post. So.
He was like, all right, I'm not about this.
Yeah.
Let's get married.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, then we started serving. And once we started serving, it was like, God was just like, I mean, that's when I think the change, it just, making friends, cutting off our old friends, and that community was huge. And that's when really we saw a lot of life change, and God just moved us from glory to glory.
So how do you go from, how do you end up hearing about HRC, and how many, this is years after this, you've been involved in the church for a long time, you start getting healed, start becoming a leader, start serving, got a little family now, things are going pretty good. But how do you get to the point where you decide you want to start sharing this part of your story, and how do you connect with HRC?
Yeah. It, at that point, there was definitely an unsettling in my spirit, just about, I think a lot of complacency and different things had setting in. And I know now I wasn't really walking in the freedom that God had for me. And so, God just started speaking to me in my heart about sharing my story. And I didn't realize that, it was that part of my story that he really wanted me to open up and share about, until a friend of mine, she had sent me this book. She works in the social issues and stuff a lot. And I picked it up, and it was literally my story. It was this 13-year-old girl who was groomed by this guy into the sex industry. And she mentioned a lot of statistics and different things that go on in America. And, at that point, it was very clear, like, this is a part of my story that God wants me to open up and share about. And so, at that same time, in His providence, I knew I had to be at this concert, up at the service station. I didn't know why or what. I just knew in my heart, I just knew I had to be there. And you happen to be given a message at the end about getting off the bench and getting involved, which is kind of hit home. And then,
you still remember the name of my message?
Yeah, something like that. It was something like that, right? Getting off the bench or so. I don't know, some of a basketball, but it was obviously speaking clearly to me. And then at the end, you mentioned the safe house, and it was just like bright lights. It's like, oh, that's where I need to share my story. And so yeah, went and kind of met you at the end briefly, and you gave me your dad's number, and your parents said I really, I guess Jason and a couple of my very, very close friends knew a little bit, but your parents were the first people I really shared my entire story with. And
was that scary for you?
Your parents are really good at making people feel comfortable. So, I mean, it was scary. It was scary initially going. I fought with God about it for, I remember, at least several days. I don't know if I should call him. I'll call him. And so when I did, but once I got there, it was just like, they have a way of, Because
this was at the very beginning. This is 5 years ago or 4 years ago when we're looking to launch this safe house. And I was talking about that. And you come up and you're like, I want to be involved. And I'm like, sweet. Well, my dad at the time was the anti-trafficking director. He's the pastor now, and Anya's the director. But I was like, good, go connect with my dad, and you did it. And so, I remember just the relationship starting to evolve from there, and my mom and dad just loving you, and the camaraderie there. And so I just want to honor you for even being brave enough to go and say, hey, this is why I want to get involved. It's hard for people to open up about this because there's so much guilt and shame, and
but once they do, like that first time I shared, it was incredible, the freedom that oh man, I still, even sharing today, I mean, I was just like, it just every time more shame and more, is just broken off, and that light gets in there, and it just so healing, and even just learning more about your ministry and what HRC does, and learning that I was actually a victim. I didn't choose, I was 13, for so many years, the enemy lied to me, and I just oh, you ran away, or you tore your family up, and you know, and it was just lies after lies. And then learning that, you know, and realizing and reading this book and HRC and realizing that, like, you know, I wouldn't have chosen that. Like, if I knew what I was doing, there's no way I would have gone down that road.
That wasn't your identity. That's not who you are. This is something that happened to you.
Yeah, for sure. And so that in itself is just freeing, and the healing and the freedom that I've been walking in since, you know, getting involved with HRC and, you know, the work that we do here is just incredible.
How do you think, so you're involved with our program at a different level because you're on our staff. What do you think, if there was a program for you when you came back, that was, how do you think that would have helped you? Like, instead of having to walk through, you know, 10, 15 years of guilt and shame and not being able to open up and not realizing you're a victim and thinking this and hearing the lies from the enemy that this is just who you are. This is what you're good for. This is all that you're good is for what you can give a man sexually and not who you are as a person. Like, what would that have been like, you know, for you to have found a group of people and a family and a program that could really help? Do you think that would have sped up the healing process? Because that's the thing I hear from you all the time is like, you're like, it's crazy how fast these women are getting healed from things that took me years and years.
Oh, it is. Yeah. And I try not to live there too much because it is kind of hard to think about like how many years I went kind of stuck in that. But yes, absolutely. I think even if that program I went to down in Florida, if they would have had the tools to know and really probe and ask like what this girl really went through, and even several, probably the girls that I was bunked with, like, and really dealt with that trauma. And I was able to open up about it, or just have people that understood, and I didn't have that shame associated with it. Oh man, I think things would have been a lot different. And just in my life, because I think back and even raising my kids, and they're great and they're beautiful, but I think that Jason and I both like just not walking in the freedom that we are. You know, I mean, I think that things probably could have went, you know, we would have been a lot more like attentive or involved in our kids' lives, and not so stuck in our own chaos and internal drama. I think that a lot of pain and things could have been avoided. But, you know, and for a lot of years, I really, that was kind of one of my, you know, just sayings, like, I couldn't understand how there would be a lot of people who would share like, oh, I'm so glad that I went through this because it's made me who I am today. And I just never understood. In my inside, I would think like, you're an idiot. Like, I would go back and change everything. But I, you know, since, you know, finding the freedom that I have and just being able to come alongside the women at the house and raise awareness for this world and stuff. Like, I actually am like able to say now that I'm thankful for my life, you know, and what happened and stuff like that. But absolutely, I think a program like this, and I think back then there was just no awareness of, you know, and if it was just so secretive and hush hush, and nobody dealt with it and nobody talked about things. So I think having HRC and other programs like HRC is a game changer.
What's your favorite part of doing what you do with the ladies?
Oh man, I would say,
without mentioning any names.
No, I would just say, like you had mentioned, seeing the transformation. It's so just, it just makes me so thankful and just gratifying just to see, like, when they come in and, you know, slowly things break off and the light in their eyes, and even, you know, I could just see the weights lifted. So I think that would be my favorite part. I love to adventure and do things too. So, and just, helping people discover, new ways to have fun.
What have been some of the activities that you've taken the women on?
Oh man, we've done some hikes and a lot of crafts and movies. And I like to eat and enjoy our awesome local businesses in Spokane. So we usually hit up a business, for some good food and stuff a lot. And so just getting out there and just enjoying nature and stuff. And God's creation and our beautiful city.
And they love hanging out with you. It's always like a highlight that I hear.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears a little bit. So, before that, it is the end of the year campaign. So I guess like before we transition, what would be something you would tell people? Because you have different companies. You helped us actually launch the thrift store. It used to be the boutique. You have a huge entrepreneur heart. So you're always out talking to people about what we do. And why would you tell people to even give to this year-end campaign or share this story with their friends? Like what would be something that you would, why would somebody want to give to the year-end campaign?
Yeah, I would just say being a part of what God is doing, like even if it is with your, just your money, like being a part part of a bigger organization that God is like using to impact so many lives. And there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that people don't see with just ministry and just even my one-on-one conversations. And it's like a ripple effect. And to be a part of that is so life-giving. It's so life-giving to know that, that I contribute to these beautiful transformations and life change and impact in our city. It's very life-giving.
What is it like? So I'm going to transition real quick, and I want to talk about this because I think it's really awesome. You had your identity at one point, there was certain names and certain things that people would put on you or you would hear from the enemy, like this is who you are. But today it's like hope, it's hero, it's entrepreneur, it's mom, it's wife, it's what does it feel like to be called those things? And can you tell us a little bit about your identity now and who you are and who you're realizing you are and some of the gifts and some of the visions and dreams that you have and why you have such a heart to open businesses to help women?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember being at like my lowest point. My mom had my kid and I was staying in and out of these houses. And I actually recall like the still small voice. I didn't understand it or know what it was at that point, but calling me to like, you're made for greatness. Like you were made to do big things. You were made for greatness. And I'm starting to understand that now. And I just think that, once I believed that and grabbed onto it, that, it was just like, God just started, just downloading these visions in me. And so, and these gifts and just realizing that so many people out there just are not walking in their purpose and their gift and their calling. And so a lot of my heart with my businesses is to inspire that in other people, inspire that freedom, inspire them to realize the greatness that they have in them. And we're all here just given on divine, purpose and destiny. And we all have, something unique and beautiful to offer the world. And I think these businesses, whether it be the thrift store or the cafe, are just avenues for people to come into and, and hope to do some job training, really establish some job training opportunities and just environments where we're going to be able to cultivate this greatness in people and these gifts in people so that they can see their value and their worth is so much more.
Do you think it's shifted for you with your business, which before we move on, do you want to get a little plug about your business, where it's located?
Yeah. Yeah, so the Garden Coffee and Local Eats is in the Valley, just right where Appaway meets University. We have a drive-through, and we have some really cool offerings, avocado toast and acai bowls, and just kind of, it's a little bit of a niche. Some healthier options, because that's part of our mission, is to restore lives, but also restore, your mind, body and spirit, so we have some healthy options. And then of course, my favorite part about our mission is that, our partnership with HRC and other nonprofits, donating 88 cents of a lot of our items and our merchandise goes straight to the Anti-Trafficking program. And so when you're, patroning our spot, you're really giving to HRC too. And so that's huge. And we're expanding. So in the spring, we're opening up a little coffee stand up on the South Hill. So it won't be the same cafe concept, but you'll be able to get our goodies fast and quick on your way to work and to and from. And so, yeah, I just, hope to continue to, just be led and, really move forward with, vision and stuff that God has given me in that regard.
How has having this mission or partnering with a nonprofit or bringing into your business a bigger mission change the culture of your business?
Oh man, I think from the baristas and the gals that I get have just the great honor to work with, to the people coming in when they realize, like this, this food that I'm purchasing is going to a greater mission. I think it's just a trickle effect to, it's very exciting. I think that we have an amazing customer base because of it. I think there's a lot of people who really care and who really want to see change and restoration in our city are gravitating toward that. And so I think it's just made for a really warm and welcoming environment and just atmosphere in general. So I think it has a huge part to play in the success of our spot and why people want to be there, because they just sense that a lot of people don't even know what it is. They just come and be like, there's something different about this place, and I just know that God's all over it.
Because what's so cool is, like, I think when I grew up, it was like, okay, well, if you're going to be a Christian or like the highest point of impact is like being in full-time ministry. And I think has my thought process on that shifted and changed. And I think, so many people are called to business. They might be called to education. They might be called to government. They might be called to arts and entertainment, or like how you've found your calling is I'm called to run a business, and I'm called to utilize this business for the kingdom of God. And it's shifted your life. It's shifted the culture of your business, and what an impact. I mean, you're reaching people that maybe the church isn't reaching, right? It's pretty cool to see, just how God can utilize businesses that aren't afraid to share that they're faith-based, that there's a mission behind this, that the whole reason we're out trying to generate income is to provide jobs and to make a living, but also to advance the kingdom of God. And I think it's fun to sit and watch when you're so bold with it, just how much God is blessing that.
Yeah, absolutely. In so many ways, go so far beyond just, financially. It just, the love and the impact and, the community, and it's very cool. I'm very excited to be part of it.
All right. Well, we love you here. We obviously have lots of our meetings at the Garden. And so if you want some coffee, Go check out the Garden Coffee and Local Eats, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
If you were touched by this interview and you'd love to donate some money to purchase meals, please click on the link below or visit our thrift store to donate some clothes. As an organization, we're going to be working to get you more stories like this. So God bless, keep reaching your community for Jesus, and we'll see you next time.